Good evening. I want to welcome you to the Jermaine Brown Political Talk Show. It's been a very long time since I did a political talk show, but today is Tuesday, November the 8th, 2023. And when I mean a long time, I think you have to go back to 2015 or 2016. I think it was 2016. I think the last time, if I remember correct, I did a political talk show, and that's when excuse me, I thought Hillary would beat Trump for the presidency, and Trump won the presidency. And ever since then, polling data has really been off, because polling data the night of or the day of the November election for the presidency told it was like a 99% chance that Hillary, according to all polling data, or most polling data, there was like a 99% chance that Hillary was going to win the presidency, and Trump won it. And though there are different theories as to why he won it, I'm not going to get into that tonight. But ever since then, that night or that day, that night, that day, that slash night, polling data has been really inaccurate after that in every election since, because it predicted, polling data predicted that there was going to be a red wave back 2 years ago in because we're now 2023, so in 2022, so a year ago, polling data predicted, and I'm talking, this is recent, that there would be a red wave, which means the Republicans was going to have a great night. And not only did the Republicans not have a great night, it was actually the Democrats, for the most part, that had a great night. And so polling data has been off. And now, why am I mentioning this? And why is this important? Because people was using polling data to bury Joe Biden and the Democrats, especially early this year, up until what happened last night. And I remember I had a conversation with my dad and my cousin, one of my cousins, and I told them, I said, look, pay attention to tonight or this upcoming election this past Tuesday. And I told them this about a week or so ago. I said, this Tuesday is going to tell you everything you need to know. Because why? Polling data again said the Republicans should have a good night in a lot of places. And it turned out, again, polling data was wrong. Now, why am I keep mentioning about polling data being wrong? Because polling data and data is saying that, oh, Biden is unpopular, which I can see it since that, or is deeply unpopular. Okay, that's fine. But here's what polling data didn't tell you. Oh, what is Trump's popularity? Oh, well, Trump and Biden is pretty much running neck and neck. And is that good for Trump, or is that good for, or bad for Biden, or is that good for Biden and bad for Trump? The question, and I'm sitting there like, well, first of all, it's a year out before the presidential election, because the presidential election is not till Tuesday of next year. So first of all, polls change. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, again, why are we relying on a flawed system? The polling data is, or polling has been flawed. What people say and what people do are two different things. I'm going to give you some examples. Give me 1 second. I just want to look this guy up real quick. Okay. And I just, because I wanted to get his name correct. Jamie Harrison ran against Lindsey Graham in a election down near South Carolina. And this was in 2022. So this was last year. And up until the day, and on the day of polling, I mean, first of all, polling data showed up until election day, that Lindsey Graham was in trouble because Jamie Harrison had like a 17-point lead or something like that. And even on election day that morning, oh, it was expected for Jamie Harrison to win the Senate and to overtake Lindsey Graham for the Senate seat. And what happened? Not only did Jamie Harrison lose, he got mollywopped. He lost by double digits. I think he lost like 15 or 19 points. Or it was some numbers like that. But he got mollywopped. And I'm sitting there like, what happened to this so-called polling data? But yet the media and everybody keeps trying to use it to forecast what's going to happen. And I remember I was fighting with my dad and cousin for the last 6 months or so, saying that the Democrats and Biden is not in as much trouble as you think they are, and what the media and even people who are good-minded, fair people is trying to tell you. Because why? I understand where this country is going when it comes to certain points. Now, I'm not going to tell you my personal viewpoints on certain issues, but here's what I do know, and here's what I've been seeing. If you're paying attention, ever since the Supreme Court a year ago, and this was before the midterm elections, like I think it was around June, July, no later than September, when they came out with that ruling turning down Roe versus Wade. Now, for those that don't understand what Roe versus Wade is, it has to do with abortions. Well, the Supreme Court basically said, we're going to do away with the abortion. And I knew then, I said, that was the worst mistake the Republican Party, or excuse me, that the Supreme Court could have did. They just handed the Democrats a gift. And of course, the Democrats won in November of that year. So that red wave turned out to not even be not only a wave or a tsunami or anything like that. It turned out to be just a little minor ripple. And then now this year, again, abortion. That the Republicans is paying the price for the Supreme Court going against abortion and to some other extent, affirmative action. So those are two issues where the Supreme Court was stripping away the rights of people. And so what do you think there's going to be? There's going to be a backlash, and the Republican Party was going to pay the price for it. And I already knew this. And not only that, and I'm going to say this to Democrats, to those who are Democrat, to the so-called Democratic officials, to stop playing defense, stop playing scared. Okay? These negative, oh, Biden can't beat Trump. Yes, Biden can beat Trump. Trump can beat Biden. Though I don't believe that's going to happen, and I'll tell you why. But Biden, anyone can be beaten if the people go out and they vote for that person. So, like, it's real simple. I remember I was arguing this point with TYT, which is the Young Turks, and I'm not a liberal or progressive or anything like that. I'm more of a conservative. So that kind of tells you my viewpoint on certain issues. But anyway, in 2020, when Biden was running in the primaries, it was expected by polling data, again, we go back to that polling data, Bernie Sanders was going to win the Democratic nomination. Because polling data said that the American public favors Bernie Sanders over any other Democrat, including Joe Biden. And then what happened? Bernie Sanders won the first couple of states. I think he came in like second in Iowa, but you could debate that because that's a caucus. So, but he came in second in Iowa. Then he came in first in New Hampshire and first in Nevada. Oh my God, Bernie Sanders is hot. Bernie Sanders is on his way to the nomination, except for one thing. And see, how can I put this? Except for one thing. South Carolina came up. And why is South Carolina important? Because if you understand political history, And there's an old saying, if you ignore history, you're doomed to repeat it. Okay? If you ignore history, you're doomed to repeat it. South Carolina came up, and Biden was struggling. Okay? Biden was struggling badly in the polls. Then all of a sudden, he wins, and Biden said this. I don't care about those early states. My firewall is South Carolina. Now he said that, I think, even before the Iowa vote, if I remember correct. But he said that before the South Carolina primaries. My firewall is South Carolina. I'm going to win South Carolina, and I'm going to win the primaries. And it did not look good. Then came South Carolina, and everybody was ready to throw the dirt on Joe Biden. And even I must admit, I wasn't so certain that Biden was going to be able to recover on this, because usually when you get negative press, it becomes almost like self-fulfilling prophecy in a sense. However, he won South Carolina, and I still said, I don't know. Even though history says whoever wins South Carolina, whether you're in the primary, and this is only in the primaries this works. In the Republican primary, no Republican has ever won the nomination for the presidency, for their party's presidency, without winning South Carolina. No candidate has ever won their primary nomination for the president of the United States without winning South Carolina. That's for the Republican side in the history of primaries. And for the Democratic side, only 2 candidates has ever won the nomination for the presidency without winning South Carolina. And those 2 are Bill Clinton, and as recent as oh my God, give me 1 second. How can I forget his name? John Kerry. Oh my God, I just had a blank there for a minute. John Kerry. John Kerry was the other person who won the nomination for the Democratic nomination without winning South Carolina. And that's in the history of primary politics on a presidential election. So that means if you win, and see, these politicians understand history. These politicians understand history. This is why they all went and campaigned, except for, now Bernie Sanders. He campaigned in South Carolina. So anyway, Biden wins South Carolina. Now remember, Biden has no money because people wasn't donating to him. They didn't think he can win. Then once he won South Carolina, that's when the money started flooding in. That's when some other candidates started dropping out. Now, the theory is, there was help with Obama. Obama helped make some calls and get some of those candidates to drop out. And I believe that may have happened, but I think Biden was going to win regardless of whether they stayed in the race or not. But that's neither here nor there. But here is what took place, and I remember it. I was watching the Young Turks at the time when Biden won South Carolina, and they says, insignificant. Okay, he finally won a state. Congratulations, but insignificant because 2 days later, because if I remember correct, the primary took place on Saturday, and then you got Super Tuesday. So 2-3 days later, you're going to have Super Tuesday, and that's not enough time to turn things around. Well, it turned out Biden not only won South Carolina, but he won practically all of Super Tuesday. Bernie Sanders won like 4 states on Super Tuesday. He was expected to win a minimum of 8. Minimum. Yet he only won 4. Okay? Won 4. And California is what saved his behind from really being down even much more after Super Tuesday. But we'll get into that another time. So then Biden now won all these Super Tuesday states, which means South Carolina still prove to be the launching point. It's about South Carolina. Okay? It's all about South Carolina in the primaries on presidential elections. So I can tell you right now, whoever wins in, because the Republicans is now running a primary for the 2024 election. Whoever wins, and it's expected to be Trump, but whoever wins the South Carolina primaries, put your money, if you're a betting man or woman, put your money on that person to win the primaries. Because why? History. So anyway, so Biden wins South Carolina. He ultimately wins the primary, and it wasn't even close. But Bernie Sanders, the polls say Bernie Sanders can beat Trump, not Biden. And this is what Cenk Uygur was arguing the whole time, because he couldn't believe that the voters went for Biden. So then he basically said, well, it's the establishment. Like the establishment took away Bernie and put Biden. No, the establishment doesn't tell them. All the establishment can do is give you the candidates that are out there. But they can't literally put the person as the winner. That's what the voters do. That's the way our system works. But the problem is they didn't like the fact that Biden won, because why? A lot of voters who look like me chose Biden, and that's where South Carolina and all those other southern states come into play. And I remember after Biden won South Carolina, Joe Scarborough, who was a former Republican, who's I think now an independent, I think he left. He recently left the Republican Party, if I remember correct. But he tweeted out saying that Biden won the first state that true Democratic voters are voting, which means they're not. It's not Nevada, not New Hampshire, and definitely not Iowa. Those are not where your true Democratic voting base is at. Your true Democratic voting base is in the South, particularly South Carolina. People who look like me. And you'll understand. So I'm trying to keep it as PC as possible because I don't want my video getting flagged. So Biden ultimately won the nomination after Cenk Uygur kept saying Biden can't beat Trump. Biden can't beat Trump. Polling data says Biden can't beat Trump. And then after Biden beats Trump, now he's trying to pretend like he never made those statements. No, you made those statements. So now, why is this important? Because now he's coming back saying the same thing. Biden can't beat Trump. But I'm like, wait a minute, didn't you play this record 4 years ago? And what happened? So now he's talking about running against Biden. And I'm saying this to the Democrats. Do not try to replace Biden on this ticket. If Biden chooses to run, let him run. Okay? If he can't beat Trump, then that's on Biden, because Biden should beat Trump. He is the commander-in-chief, and the commander-in-chief has certain advantages than the challenger does, because he already is sitting in that seat. So he can do certain things that gives him an advantage that the person challenging him cannot do. Like, for instance, if there's a good economy, it's going to be hard to beat the person who's in that seat. See, we as Americans, we don't generally like change. What do I mean by that? When we elect our presidents, we tend to elect them for 2 terms. The only time, and I'm taking out assassinations and doing something crooked that forces you to leave. I'm taking those people out. But just looking at just straight elections, we tend to give our presidents 2 terms. The only time we don't give them 2 terms is if 1 or 2 things happen. See, you can be good at your job and the people don't like you, they'll still get you a 2nd term. The people can like you and you can be bad at your job, a la Bush. but the people liked him. So he got a second term. But it's impossible to get a second term if people don't like you and you're bad at your job. That's where Trump comes in. People didn't like Trump in 2020. There was a lot of anti-Trump sentiment in 2020, but that's not what got Trump beat. Here's what got Trump beat: his poor handling of the COVID. That was like the final straw. Now, not only do we not like you, you're bad at your job. That's going to get you beat because now you got two negatives instead of one. Okay? See, you rather be George Bush, where people like you, but you're bad at your job, but people like you, or you want to be Clinton, where you're good at your job, but people don't like you. And I'm talking about Bill Clinton. But because he was good at his job, he's getting a second term. Same thing with George W. Bush, not George H.W. Bush. George W. Bush. He was bad at his job. He was a bad president, but people liked him. I liked him. I'm going to be honest with you. He was a likable individual. So, yeah, you're going to get a second term. But you're not getting a second term if you're bad at your job and the people don't like you. And that's where Trump is. Now, where does this leave Biden? Biden is not very well liked, but he is good at his job as president. So he's going to most likely get reelected. Reluctantly, he's going to get reelected. Why? Because of the person, especially assuming Trump wins the nomination, which it looks like he will, because it's going to be hard to beat him with those MAGA Republicans, and there's a lot of them. And so it's going to be hard to beat them. And the Republican Party is the smallest party in number. They're smaller than the Democratic Party, and both parties are smaller than the Independent Party. The Independent Party is the largest party in this country, and we're only talking in this country. Followed by the Democratic Party, then the Republican Party. The Republican Party of the three is the least amount of members. But assuming that it's Trump, and it looks like it's going to be Trump is more disliked than Biden. And I don't think the country's going to go back to Trump. That's why they voted him out of office to begin with. If they wanted Trump, see, folks, I believe in keeping things simple. If the people wanted Trump, they would have voted him for a second term in 2020. It's just that simple. He was already the sitting U.S. president, so it would have been easy to just vote for him, to give him a second term, as they give most presidents, good or bad. They give him a second term. But the people got tired of Trump. That's why they voted him out, and they used Biden. Because why? Even if Biden is not the most likable person, and Biden is more likable than Trump, but you're not going to hear the media talk about that too tough. But Biden is more likable than Trump. People can stomach Biden more than they can stomach Trump. And how do I know this? Look what took place last night. Trump backed a few candidates, endorsed a few candidates. And those candidates not only lost, they lost badly. Daniel Cameron being one of them, who is the attorney general in the state of Kentucky, who tried to run for the governorship. And he's a Trump backed him. Trump gave him a ringing endorsement. And everybody thought, well, you know what? And Trump thought, and just like Cameron thought, that in a state like Kentucky, which is conservative and red, deep red, there's no way he could lose, because Cameron is a Republican. There's no way he could lose to that Democratic governor, except for one thing. Well, and I think he was going to lose even if this one thing didn't take place, but to me, it sealed his defeat. his mishandling of the killing of Breonna Taylor. He grossly mishandled it. He grossly underestimated the will of the people. And to me, what he did was outright criminal. Really, he belongs in jail, not running for an election. What he did. You're an attorney general, a prosecutor. You were supposed to protect. You failed to do the number one job that you was technically hired to do. But unfortunately, in this country, a lot of attorney generals align themselves more with the police rather than with the people. But at the end of the day, it's the people who determine whether you stay in office or get higher office or not. So he was running for higher office and they wanted to teach him a lesson. So the word was every county he went into, despite Trump's endorsement. And Trump is popular in the state of Kentucky. And should he be the nominee, he's going to win Kentucky in the general election. That's a fait accompli. That's a guarantee. He's going to win the state of Kentucky in the general election. But despite Trump's strong endorsement, it could not save Daniel Cameron because in every county he went into, it's being reported that he was asked about Breonna Taylor. And people kept mentioning Breonna Taylor. And he could not escape Breonna Taylor. And quite frankly, I hope he never escapes Breonna Taylor. Calm down, Jermaine. Okay. So then now you say, well, Jermaine, why are you so sure that Biden's going to beat Trump in 2024, even before the results from yesterday? It's real simple. You got to get to 270 electoral votes. You can win. See, many times the Democrats on the presidential election wins the popular vote. So let's just put it this way. There's no way he's going to lose the popular vote. And I'm talking about Biden. He's going to win the popular vote. No Republican has won the Republican vote since a long, long time ago. Okay? You got to go back, 3-4 decades or so, the last time a Republican won the popular vote in a presidential election. In other words, it's just not going to happen. So Biden is going to win the popular vote, but that's not how we elect our presidents. We elect our presidents off the electoral college. So that means you got to get to 270 electoral college votes to become the president. So then now, every state is going to be into a camp. States like New York and California is going to go to Biden, guaranteed. Trump's not winning those states. And I'm just using these as examples. The state of South Carolina, the state of Florida, they're going to go to Trump. Pretty much guaranteeing it, they're going to Trump. Just know that they're going to Trump. So all these states are going to be in the corner, but there's going to come down to 5 states. This election is going to come down to 5 states. Now, before 2020, the election usually comes down to 3 states. The 3 states is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Everybody knows that. Both candidates, it's like you stay on your side, I stay on my side, and we're going to fight for these 3 states to determine who wins the presidency. That's usually the way it works. That's usually the way it works. But in 2020, Trump not only lost those 3 states, those 3 states usually go Democratic, by the way, on the presidential election, but they went Republican in 2016. That's how Trump got the White House. But in 2020, Trump not only lost those 3 states, but more important, and he was going to try to steal the election because he had fake electors in those 3 states, except for one problem. He didn't just lose those 3 states. He lost 2 traditional, reliable Republican states, Arizona and Georgia. And that's what ultimately cost him the election, because now he couldn't steal the election, because by losing Arizona and Georgia, there was no way, even if he won those other states, he was going to still get to the 270. So trying to steal those other states just no longer made sense. And then now that came January 6th right after that, because he definitely didn't go quietly. Let's just put it that way. Okay? So you said, well, Jermaine, how are you certain he's going to lose again? Because, now, and we're going to put on our thinking caps here, folks. Forget what just took place last night, even though that's a great indication that Biden's in good shape for 2024. But let's just eliminate what took place last night. I'm sorry, today is not Tuesday. Today's Wednesday. I've got my days mixed up. My apologies. But because Tuesday was the election. Sorry, not Wednesday. I mean, not Tuesday was the election. But anyway, here's why I'm pretty certain Biden's in great shape, despite the so-called polling data. It's going to still come down to those three states: Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia. I mean, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. So those three states are going to still be in play. And those states can technically go to Trump. I'm not going to tell you that they won't. But here's the problem. What about Georgia and Arizona? Trump cannot win the presidency, folks, assuming all the other states stay the same. They either go into the Biden column or the Trump column. So let's assume that all those other states go as predicted, because that's what we're basing this assumption off of, which is most likely to happen. All those other, in other words, don't expect Trump to lose more states than what he lost in 2020. Don't expect Biden to lose more states than what he lost in 2020, as far as those states is concerned. These are the 5 most important states that's going to determine the election, folks. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia. These are the 5 states. So now let's assume Trump wins Michigan and Wisconsin, which is a good possibility. But if Biden wins Arizona and Georgia, he cancels out Trump's win in Wisconsin and Michigan, which means this comes down to Pennsylvania. And there's a high likelihood Trump's not going to win Pennsylvania again. And if it holds to be a Democrat, Biden wins re-election. And if it goes back the way it did in 2020, which means Biden wins Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and Arizona, then Biden retains the presidency. So for Trump to win the presidency, here's what he has to do. He has to get Arizona back into his column. He has to get Georgia back into his column. And then he's going to have to win at least Pennsylvania, because he's going to have to win that state if he wants the presidency. He's going to have to win that state. But let's put Pennsylvania aside. Let's put Arizona aside. You better look at Georgia, because without Georgia, he's not winning the presidency. I'm going to tell you that right now. And here's his biggest problem in Georgia. He's got 2 problems. Number one, he lost the state in 2020. So he really got 3 problems. Number one, he lost the state in 2020. Number 2, he's going up against a very popular Republican governor in the state of Georgia. Okay? And more importantly, number 3, he's facing criminal indictment in the state, not civil, criminal indictment in the state of Georgia. And there's talk of taking him off the ballot in Georgia. If they take him off the ballot in Georgia, that means he can't even run in the state of Georgia, which means now you can't win the state of Georgia. And the same talk is being done in Arizona. Quiet as it's kept. They're at least talking about charging him criminally in the state of Arizona for trying to steal the election back in 2020. Because that's why he's being accused of, that's what he's being accused of in Georgia, trying to steal the election back in 2020. So unless he could find a way to overcome those landmines and win those states back to him, or win those states back to the Republican Party, those are states that you can't. If you're the Republican Party and you lose Arizona and Georgia, and those turn blue, there's no telling the next time you're going to win a presidential election. Because that means you got to find other Democratic states to flip red, and that gets difficult to flip a state. Those, now there was one time when like West Virginia used to be a blue state, vote blue, but those were decades ago. But it took a long time for that state to turn from blue to red. It took a long time for Virginia from being a red state to a blue state. It didn't become a blue state until 2012 after Obama won re-election there. But before that, it was a red state. But when Obama won Virginia twice, now all of a sudden Virginia is a solidly reliable blue state in the presidential election. But there was a time when you wouldn't even think of a Democrat winning in the state of Virginia. It's a southern state, and it was a red state. Not anymore. But those shifts usually take time. So what am I saying? If Biden wins Georgia again, a second time in a row, Georgia now goes from being a red state to what they call a purple state. And what is a purple state? That's called a toss-up, which means a Democrat or a Republican win. And if you're the Republicans, you do not want that state to go from red to purple. Because if it goes from red to purple, there's a high likelihood it's going to end up turning blue. Or let's just say Trump was to, if in 2020, he would have won Michigan again. Let's just say. Now, it would have been 2 times he won Michigan in a row. Then Michigan would have turned from a solidly blue state in the presidential election to a purple state, which means chances are eventually it would become what? A red state. Because that's how Ohio is now solidly red. There was a time when Ohio and Florida, for that matter, used to be a purple state, which was once a blue state. And I'm talking about Ohio. Ohio used to be a blue state on the presidential election. Because remember when Obama ran against Hillary in 2008, Obama won South Carolina. He won Iowa, then he ultimately won South Carolina, then he won Super Tuesday. Then Super Tuesday 2, which is where Ohio ran in, Ohio, Texas, and a few other states. At that time, I remember. I forgot. But I know Ohio was in Super Tuesday 2. Hillary made this comment. So go Ohio, so go the presidency. Because why? At that time, you had to win Ohio to win the presidency. And this was back in 2008 because why? At that time, it was a purple state. And so Ohio was that state that you would be fighting for, that whole Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. But Ohio was the state that would usually determine if you win the presidency or didn't. It wasn't even Michigan, Pennsylvania. No, it was just really Ohio. So go Ohio, so go the nation. That's what she said. That was the signal to the Democrat superdelegates not to leave her because why? She won Ohio in the primaries. And she said, you're going to need Ohio to win the presidency. And she wasn't wrong. But Obama ultimately won Ohio in the general election. So she technically wasn't wrong. At that time, you needed Ohio if you wanted to win the presidency because they came down to Ohio. And in 2000, it came down to Florida. So you see how it was always like one particular state that both parties would fight over. Well, now it's 3 particular states, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. And if Biden wins Arizona and Georgia again, which is highly likely, now instead of fighting over 3 states, now you're going to be fighting over 5. And that's not good news if you are a Republican. The fewer states you have to fight over, the better. Because why? Republicans have even said this. If the people show up to vote, we lose. Because why? They're smaller in numbers in registered voters. If the people come out to vote, we lose. If the people stay home or don't vote, we win. Simple math. I want to thank you for watching another segment of the Jermaine Brown's political show. Have a good evening.